Welcome in to an Attacking Third emergency pod. The emergency is that we have to talk about the U.S. Women's National Team's officially announcement of hiring Emma Hayes as the next head coach, as well as some breaking news coming out of the expansion side, Bay FC. I'm Jenny Chiu here with the original pod squad, Lisa Carlin and Sandra Herrera. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us. This is so fun. I actually haven't podcasted from home in way too long, so I am so glad to be back on here with you guys.
It feels like family. It feels like we're getting the holidays started early. Honestly, love that we're all doing this together. The whole gang is back.
The gang is back, but thank you guys for letting me be on with you guys. Let's go ahead and get into that big news. First, about expansion side Bay FC announcing their first signing, because this is the breaking news. And then we'll get into Emma Hayes a little bit later because there's so much to dive into there. Alex Louisville joins the club from the Kansas City Current in exchange for $175,000 in allocation money and protection from Bay FC in the expansion draft. There is so much to break down here. Sandra, give me the details about this whole situation right now.
Yeah, I think it's an important signing for Bay FC. I think you want to get in front of all the headlines ahead of expansion draft. Like, who is going to be that first player? How are you going to target fleshing out your roster? And they went ahead with a young prospect with a pretty high ceiling at this point in Alex Louisville. This is a player with local ties to the Bay Area, a Santa Clara alum. So she's not unfamiliar with playing in elite programs and at high levels. I thought she had a pretty underrated Rookie of the Year season with Kansas City Current in their run up to the 2022 NWSL championship. She unfortunately had to navigate some injury in 2023, but I think this is a young player with a very high ceiling to compete in this league. And the fact that they went out and essentially said they want to get a specific player. I think it's a mutual win here for both sides of the trade. If you're looking at it from Bay FC, getting to kind of build around a local kid, and if you're Kansas City, getting in front of the expansion draft and giving up receiving expansion protection.
Lisa, how do you see this one?
Yes, Jenny, I mean, this is a really big signing for Bay FC because this is their first player ever that they're signing. This is their franchise player. You look at most recent history in the NWSL with San Diego Wave and Angel City coming in, and who their big signings were. For San Diego, it was forward Alex Morgan, and for Angel City, it was Kristen Press, two U.S. international superstars. So the fact that Bay FC is going with a defensive midfielder in Alex Louisville that is only in her second season ever as a professional says a lot about the direction that this club wants to go on the pitch. They want to be a team that doesn't necessarily care about the flashy lights. They want to win, and they're building their team and their roster around a defensive midfielder. So they care about defense. They care about how the NWSL is played because it is a pretty transitional and physical league. And when you look at the makeup of Alex Louisville as a player, she's an incredible defensive player. She's really good at 1v1 defending. She can slot into the holes to prevent through passes by the opposition. But with the ball, she's also really intelligent. She played higher up at Santa Clara when she was in college, and she likes to be higher on the field. She wants to score goals. So she has the mindset of almost playing as a number 10 midfielder when she is the 6 in the defensive midfield role. So that just gives her the vision to see the players ahead of her, to see the attack unfolding in front of her 3-4 steps ahead of what it's already doing. She's really a box-to-box two-way player for Bay FC. This is really big for them to get this player in this fashion and to be what this Bay FC side is building their entire team around.
I've seen some comments that obviously Kansas City players and fans are not very happy that they're losing her because she did have a really good run with them, but it is a good place for Bay FC to start. Can you guys just break down for me, silly little me, the fact that they are now protected from Bay FC? Because we were mentioning earlier that Orlando Pride is also protected, and what that does during this expansion draft, that's kind of new.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, I think if last year's double expansion draft is anything to go off of, the existing clubs are already working those phones. They're returning the emails, they're returning the text messages, and talking about what are the ways that we can get in front of this double expansion draft. I'm not too surprised that the first two teams out of the gate to negotiate something with Bay FC is an Orlando Pride squad that's building up on their roster build, and a Kansas City side that has a new coach in Vlatko Andonovski and are trying to build back in their return to the hopeful NWSL playoffs in 2024.
This is huge for Kansas City because now they get to protect their players, because the expansion draft, as Sandra was mentioning, yes, there is an element of, okay, are these new clubs going to talk to these players? Who wants to come them? The players have a little bit more of a choice because of the most recent CBA, but there's also a lot that can be determined by this expansion draft on the fly. So a player receiving a call saying, okay, wow, I am packing up my bags and moving across the country. So a lot of clubs try to protect their own players. So when this conversation kind of transpired between Bay FC and Kansas City, Bay FC was interested in Alex Luera. And although KC wasn't fond to let her go, she was an incredible player for them, helped lead them to an NWSL championship just a year ago. They said, okay, can we lose one, try to get as much money as we possibly can, and then we get to protect the rest of the players on the team. So you have to be really smart as an ownership group and as sporting directors within these clubs to communicate with your players and to understand who wants to go there. And Alex Luera spoke to media saying that she wanted to go back to the Bay Area. She wanted to go play for Bay FC. Nothing against Kansas City. It was just, she's familiar with the area. She went to Santa Clara. She is incredibly familiar with the owners at Bay FC. You look at Leslie Osborne, Danielle Slayton, Allie Wagner, Brandy Chastain. These are players, former U.S. international players, former Santa Clara players that Luera has a close relationship with. And so to have those conversations with Luera and Bay FC, and for Luera to go to Kansas City and say, hey, this is a move I want to do, like, I will be happy doing this. It kind of honors the wishes of everyone. And now Kansas City can protect the rest of their roster from Bay FC in the expansion draft.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Remember, that draft for the expansion is December 15th. So that's coming up in about a month. And now they are protected with this news. We're going to come back and talk about Emma Hayes being the new U.S. Women's National Team head coach when we come back. U.S. Soccer officially announced Emma Hayes as the next head coach of the U.S. Women's National Team. She will not officially take over head coaching duties until the end of Chelsea's season in May. And during that time, Twyla Kilgore is going to continue her role as interim head coach. Let's go ahead and get immediate reactions to this because it is actually happening. I know for a while there it was just rumors, Lisa.
Jenny, it's actually happening. U.S. Soccer confirmed it. Emma Hayes has talked about it as well. But when these rumors first started swirling around and Chelsea announced that Emma Hayes just wouldn't be returning for next year, Hayes tried to play it off and say, hey, I want to spend more time with my family, and I've really enjoyed my time here, just waiting for the ball to drop with U.S. Soccer. This is a massive hire for U.S. Soccer. When you look at Emma Hayes and her tenure at Chelsea, being there for over a decade, what she's been able to accomplish there, 6 Super League titles, 5 FA Cup wins. She's won manager of the season 6 different times with Chelsea. And she's been able to take a club from what it was nothing all the way to a super powerhouse, 4-time consecutive Super League champions. And she's done all of this essentially by herself and just building this club up from the ground up with all the different players that she's brought in. And now the fact that she is coming to U.S. Soccer and she is taking on a U.S. Women's National Team that has fallen a little bit from the top of the mountain. It's a challenge for Emma Hayes. And it's one that she talked about how she's only dreamed of this. It's a huge hire for U.S. Soccer, and I'm really excited about the future now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Lisa. I think it's that challenge that actually might have been that final motivating factor for both the Federation and Hema Hayes to kind of agree to and finalize this contract for her to take over things. And look, I think this is going to be that hire that checks off a lot of boxes for many people, whether it's U.S. Soccer Federation or fans, general public, for the casual viewers who are just into soccer as a global concept. But this is the name that checks off those boxes. It checks off the fact that she is a big name coming out of Europe. She's able to check off the qualities that sporting director Matt Crocker wanted to look for in terms of casting a very wide net for multiple candidates. He wanted to get someone in who was a good communicator, able to build player relationships in line with being a good communicator, someone with, a tactical mindset, an excellent football IQ to be able to go ahead and communicate that vision and communicate those tactics. And someone, of course, as well with the good record for scouting and developing, because this is a program that is in a little bit of influx. It's in a little bit of a transitional period. Where are they going after this round of 16 exit in the World Cup? And Emma Hayes is a coach, in their opinion, that fits all of those boxes.
Well, Sandra, when you say all of this, I know we have to get into her contract a little bit, but I think the biggest thing on my mind right now is the fact that she is not taking over until the end of the season. That can be at the end of the WSL season, which is May 18th, or it can be after the Champions League final, which is scheduled for May 25th. That then allows her 4 matches on the U.S. bench before the Olympics that's going to take place August 10th. I mean, this is a bit of a concern, Sandra.
It's definitely a question mark for sure. I think when we take a look at some of those qualities that we heard about from U.S. Soccer and the timeline to make a hire like this, sporting director Matt Crocker said, we want to have somebody in and hired by December. So maybe they ran into some issues along the way of this hiring process. We heard in an initial shortlist with reporting out of the Athletics and Australia's Tony Gustafson, Juventus Joe Montemurro, Reigns, Laura Harvey were part of that shortlist. Who could it be? And Emma Hayes included as part of those candidates as well, but really had her profile risen in terms of who was going to be the person to be given this role. And maybe some of those things that U.S. Soccer ran into was that short timeline. There's not a lot of months between now and that Olympic buildup, but they also want to have someone in here that's going to keep an eye on the future. They're thinking more long term here than just who are we going to get in to make sure we make a run at this next major international tournament. Yes, they want someone to go ahead and lead them through the Olympics, but they also want someone to look beyond that as well. So with other head coaching positions needing to be filled, maybe some of those coaches settling into those roles, whether they're national team levels or club levels, they worked out a contract here for Emma Hayes to go ahead and take on this role while being able to close out her season in Chelsea.
Lisa, what does this mean for the Olympics, though? Does this mean that they're not as focused there and they are focusing for that future build, potentially the 2027 World Cup?
I think that's exactly what it means. Of course, the Olympics coming up in Paris next summer are important for this U.S. side to establish themselves or really reestablish themselves on the international level. And although Hayes will be focused on Chelsea until May, there are international windows and moments where she can have those communications. And because Twyla Kilgore is staying at that interim head coaching role, Hayes and Kilgore have had those conversations about how this is going to look over the next several months while Kilgore is technically in charge as the interim still, but Hayes will be in charge, and how they kind of hand that baton off from Kilgore to Hayes. Now, when Hayes does step in, it is not a lot of time. She'll have 2 windows, as you mentioned, Jenny, just 4 games to get this team up to speed. But there will be a lot done prior to that through Twyla Kilgore, who will be communicating on the ground in the States with the players, with players that have already been called into camp, players that they might want to see in their future camps being called in. But the Olympics are going to be a new foundation because it is a new era of U.S. soccer with Emma Hayes at the helm, and it will look different. And that's a really good thing for this federation right now. They need to turn over a new leaf and see what else can be provided with the power that is Emma Hayes and what she can bring to this team.
You mentioned that power that is Emma Hayes. I think that that's one of the biggest things that we've been seeing lately is that she's not afraid to make changes, which is exactly where the U.S. national team is right now. It is in a moment of flux and in need of change. We've seen some videos come out where she talks about, being pretty direct towards her players and treating them as professionals in that way and respecting them enough to be very direct in what she wants. But I think one of the biggest things that has come out is Chris Whittingham actually posted a video that he had interviewed Emma Hayes about 2 years ago on Chelsea FC. And she talked about being made in America. She talked about it being really important to her. She said she didn't know, the US players don't know when they're outmatched. They don't believe that that's even a possibility. And that is what helped create her and the way that she coaches and leads now. And I think that that's exactly why, or one of the reasons why she wants to come back to the United States. But Sandra, what can you tell us about this process to hire this coach that's led by Matt Crocker? Because I know that a lot of people are curious into that.
Well, yeah, it's been something that was ongoing really since Vlatko Andonovski stepped away and resigned from his position back in mid to late August. He had a bit of a check-in in terms of giving an update on a timeline in September, talked about qualities that they were going to look for and the windows of time that they had. But it consisted of several dozen candidates up for the position being flown in and out for varying interviews process. So multiple rounds as well. So this is just going through evaluations, data and tactical points as well for some of the candidates to go ahead and shine a little bit of light on who they would be in this role and how they would navigate this program moving forward. And I think ultimately that might have been the final indicator for who they were going to roll the dice with. And in terms of who was actually going to take on this position, it changed from time to time for things that I was hearing from various sources. It was believed at one point that Tony Gustafson may have been the main candidate at one point, but accessibility maybe was something that also came in as a different sticking point. A coach that is going to operate stateside, and what are the complexities there from Chicago to Atlanta between headquarters and ultimately this new training facility in operations for U.S. Soccer out of Georgia. So I think they're going to get that win in Emma Hayes, but they had to concede a little bit in ultimately getting her stateside. And we're going to see that window from now till May. She's going to operate primarily in Europe, and just echo what Lisa said and how that's going to look. That's going to take complete buy-in really from everyone, from technical support staff to the eventual players who are going to be called up into some of these international windows that take place from now in December all the way through to that Olympic window in the summer. So it's going to be interesting to see when an opportunity is going to come, perhaps maybe in a public media setting, to go ahead and get some more clarity on some of those things and some of those windows coming up. But in terms of the U.S. Soccer Federation going out there and getting their big name candidate, it maybe was a shorter process than they would have liked, but they went out and I think achieved their goals to get to the next phase of the managerial role.
Sandra, you mentioned how it was almost like U.S. Soccer had to give a little in terms of their timeline of when they wanted this coach on U.S. soil versus the best candidate that they could get. And frankly, to me, that says so much about Emma Hayes as her character and as a person that she is, because in 2021, she re-signed a contract with Chelsea that was for an undisclosed time. It basically was like a gentleman's agreement between the club and her, saying that they will have each other as an agreement and a partnership until like one of them decides it wasn't. But it was like a very true and honest agreement between them. So the fact that she said, yes, U.S. Soccer, I'll take this job, but I am not leaving Chelsea high and dry. This is a club that has grown incredibly near and dear to her heart because she spent the better half of 10 years with them and with Chelsea building it up. She didn't just want to leave them. And that says a lot to me about who she is as a person and why players appreciate her so much, and her honesty and how she's able to manage and communicate with these players, because it's really human. And that's pretty cool to see in this position.
Lisa, I couldn't agree more. Just the fact that she's been there for so long, she really did say that Chelsea is her. She is Chelsea. Like the fact that she feels so intertwined with this club that gave her so much and she gave so much too is wonderful. And it does talk about her character so much. There's so much more to talk about in this new appointment. So stay with us. We have a quick commercial break and we'll be back talking to Emma Hayes. Welcome back to Attacking Third. Let's get into Emma Hayes' contract because she is set to become the world's highest paid women's soccer head coach, and reports saying that she will have the same base pay as Greg Berhalter, the U.S. men's national team head coach. Those details are listed right here. $1.6 million per year, and her contract will run through the Women's World Cup. I mean, Lisa, when you heard this, how excited were you? What was your reaction to the fact that it's $1.6 million per year?
Yeah, it's well deserved for a coach that is coaching one of the very best teams in the entirety of the world. Of course, incredibly recent history has knocked the U.S. out of that number one spot. But this U.S. women's national team has been riding in the number one FIFA ranking spot for a very long time. And this is a really big role. Frankly, the fact that the U.S. isn't number one anymore makes it a bit more of a challenge. And when you're hiring a coach with a pedigree that Emma Hayes has, it is well deserved that she receives this much money. I think the little factor in there and the fun fact, frankly, is that Greg Berhalter and her make the exact same amount is just kind of like an interesting wrinkle throughout it because I mean, Emma Hayes, this is her very first international coaching position. So that's great that she's able to achieve that much money. But I really think it's well deserved based on how successful she has been with Chelsea and the different elements that she brings to this coaching role.
Yeah, I
Sandra,
think
are you in line with that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting note that Lisa makes there, referring to it as an interesting wrinkle, because it's not something that is directly tied, with all of the headlines that we had seen in the last year with equal pay and the collective bargaining agreement between the U.S. men's team and the U.S. women's national team. But I think it speaks a bit louder because of that. It's not about making sure you're meeting a quota or something that was written into a bylaw. They're paying Emma Hayes because Emma Hayes is the best candidate for the job. And when you're the best candidate for the job, you should get paid the money. So this is a delightful thing to see that it's $1.6 million. It's per year. It's going to run through her contract in 2027. And that's what you want to see. I think when you find yourself and claiming to be one of the leaders of women's soccer in the world, that comes across the board, whether it's with the support of your players, that you're providing them with the endless resources, or when you have to find that next head coach to take you to the next level. So I love it.
I love it as well. Lisa, but really quickly, the new mentality that Emma Hayes will bring to this team, what would you say about that?
I like this mentality. She is tough on players that aren't performing well. She's not afraid to not play players that aren't performing, but she also really encourages the growth of young players and understanding of the game. That's an element for U.S. soccer that I'm excited for Hayes to bring, a really tactical understanding, because these players are the 0.01%. They understand the game well. Allow them the flexibility to showcase that on the pitch and to make in-game adjustments tactically based on the opposition, whether they're prepared for that or they're not. Emma Hayes will get them up to speed on that because that's what she's done at Chelsea. So I love that she's going to bring that type of element to this side, and the mentality is a winning one. And she understands that with these U.S. players. It's just going to roll right into that.
100%. I agree with you guys on everything. I'm so excited about this. We're going to continue to talk about this as more news comes out. We're continuing to follow this story. We'll watch the December windows and see what's going on. But guys, thank you so much for joining this original cast crew of Attacking Third. I'm so honored to be on with you guys. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again on Friday at 8 p.m.